So look at it this way. I understand what you're saying because human beings, for the most part, are conditioned to be control freaks, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. We're conditioned to be control freaks. And the way that we view our lives is to view our lives as something that we're protecting, we're trying to control. The experience that we have of our lives is generally a function of the situations that we find ourselves in, isn't it? Yeah, the experience that we have of our lives, the experience that we have of who we are, generally speaking, for human beings, is a matter of the situation or the circumstances that you find yourself in. Whether we're talking about the thought process, that's a situation you find yourself in, isn't it? Yeah, the thought process is the situation you find yourself in. Most people don't look at thinking like a situation I find myself in. Most people look at thinking like I'm thinking thoughts. So it's not a situation I find myself in, right? It's something I'm doing, isn't it? Yeah, thinking is not a situation I find myself in, it's something I'm doing. That's the way thinking gets perceived, right? And so in this work, in terms of meditation and consciousness and the education that this is providing for us, we're asked to look at this differently and see that thinking is a circumstance. Thinking is a situation I find myself in. In the same way, life is a situation I find myself in. So, at any time in my life, there will always be circumstances, won't there be? And the circumstances that there will always be will be external circumstances, environmental circumstances, and internal circumstances, right? And most people don't pay much attention to the internal part, right? Nonetheless, it is the case that there's an internal world and an external world. So the circumstances that you're experiencing at any particular point in time are circumstances that are existing in what we call the exterior world and the internal world. Yeah, and we're conditioned to relate to the experience we're having in our lives as a function of circumstances. So if we're not happy, we pay attention to the circumstances. What's causing me to be unhappy? If we're not comfortable, what's causing me to be uncomfortable? If we're not able to meditate, what's the source of my difficulty in meditating? If the source of your difficulty in meditating is that there are external noises, right? Like today we're in a room here where we're next to a room where there's a spin class, so there is noise coming through the wall, right? And so the way that might occur for you is it might occur for you like, well, I can't meditate because that's distracting me, keeping me from meditating. And what I would suggest to you to consider is that that has no more power, that has no more ability to distract you than your thoughts do. Does it? What's the difference? That has no more ability to distract you than your thoughts do. It's something that's occurring in the exterior world, just like your thoughts are something that's occurring in the internal world. The thing that's different about this particular situation in which there's noise in the external world and the internal world is the internal world is pretty much constant. Thinking is pretty much constant. It's happening constantly, right? When you go to meditate and you just go to sit still and you focus attention on the breath, the thought process, which is something that's, now this is interesting to take note of. When you go to sit still and practice meditation, the thought process, which is going on all the time, doesn't bother you in the normal course of events. You know, as you live your life, as you go through your life each day, and you're thinking, right? You're thinking, right? That's not bothering you, is it? No, it's not bothering you. But you go to meditate and you sit still and you're focusing attention on the breath. Now the thinking that was you thinking that didn't bother you is now bothering you, right? Same thinking that didn't bother you is now bothering you, right? So the question becomes this, whether we're talking about meditation or anything else, is the quality of your life, is your ability to relax, is your ability to focus your attention, is your ability to be aware of being aware, a function of circumstances? Is your well-being a function of circumstances? That's a good question, don't you think? Is your well-being a function of circumstances? Because circumstances will always be there, sometimes good, sometimes bad, right? Yeah. And in the end, there are certain circumstances that are inevitable. Right? The inevitable circumstances? Old age, sickness, and death, according to the Buddha, right? There are circumstances, old age, sickness, and death. And then as you go through your everyday life, what are you encountering? Circumstances, right? Internal and external circumstances. Situations in the world that are unpredictable. Situations within your own psyche and within your own body that are unpredictable. You get a headache, you get a backache, you catch a cold, you get COVID, right? You get indigestion. So all of these things, internal and external, are always happening, you know. It's not a problem when they're what we want. It's not a problem when it's a pleasure situation, right? Except that, you know, we attempt to try and keep the pleasure going and avoid the pain, right? So if the thing is this, here's what I want you to consider. If when you go to meditate, something is determining your ability to meditate circumstantially, whether it's your thinking, whether it's noises around you, whether it's a pain in your body, no matter what it is, if that's the case, then would you agree with me that it's probably also the case that circumstances are affecting you that way all the time? Yeah. Well, if you can recognize that, then the question becomes, is there a possibility of, is there a way of being, is there a possibility that can allow you to exist in circumstances, whether they be internal or external, and not have those circumstances determine you? Not have those circumstances determine you. In other words, for example, here today, we're in a room where there's noise coming through the wall because of the spin class next door. So now the question becomes, does that mean it's not possible to meditate?
No. Makes it challenging for personality.
Well,
I'm like, oh, I'm singing along with music, but you're right. It just, like, that was distracting me versus my normal thoughts. So either way, I'm distracted, so when you think of one versus another distraction, you know. But yeah, my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, this is going to be challenging, you know.
Now watch. See, this is what this is all about. All I'm asking you to do is pay attention. Notice what's going on here. My immediate thought is, what was the immediate thought?
This is very
distracting. Right. Yeah. So now watch. My immediate thought. I have said here that if you're going to make progress in the practice of meditation, if you're going to make progress in developing the understandings necessary to be awake, right, that you have to understand, you have to practice being aware of the fact that you don't think.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I don't make my thoughts. It just came. That was like a thought showed up.
Yeah, but I
have no control over it.
Yeah, but you said I thought.
Right. Okay. The thought came to me.
Yeah, the thought came to you. The thought came to you, but then, as in the case with everything else, the I, the ego, the personality claims it. I thought. Not a thought happened, I thought. Right? And then you think you thought the thought. Right? You think you thought the thought, and then you suffer from being affected by the thought you thought you thought. Can you follow that?
Yeah.
No, this is important. This is important because if you slow down, you can start to see what's happening. You think you thought the thought. And the thought you thought was that noises occur when I'm trying to meditate that distract me and keep me from being able to meditate. That's the thought you thought. But then when we talk about it, you say, well, yeah, it just happened. The thought just happened. Well, make up your mind. You see?
Well, when we reason it out, it makes sense.
No, when you slow down and look at it, it's not a question of making sense. When you slow down and look at it, you see what's actually happening. That's all. When you slow down and look at it, you can see what's going on. This is the whole purpose of practicing meditation, is to discover there's a possibility to extricate yourself from being part of the problem, right? Because if you think your thoughts, you're part of the problem. See, this is the flip. This is the flip that we're dealing with here. The flip is instead of the personality thinking it's aware, right? The flip is the personality is in awareness. Not that it's aware. The personality is showing up in awareness. Awareness is you, not the personality. And, recently a lot of people have been contacting me who read the book, and there are people who are contacting me who read the book that are saying that they had an opening. They actually had an enlightenment experience from reading the book, right? Because the book was pointing something out that hadn't occurred to them yet, had not occurred to them before. So I was working with a client yesterday, the first time I met with this person, and she was sharing with me, the issues that she had to deal with, which were pretty common issues for people. She was an older person. And so I started to talk to her about the approach that I use in doing work with people as far as psychotherapy is concerned. And as I continued to kind of open it up and elaborate and language it and point to it and so forth, she started to cry. She started to cry. And when I said, what's happening, she said, I see it. She said, I see what you're pointing at. I see what you're talking about. I see it, right? That's the whole point of all of this, right? The whole point of all of this is for you to see what I'm talking about for yourself, for you to recognize this is not something that you're learning. This is not information that you're getting and then you're going to use the information to do something. No, this is pointing to what the original reality is. This is pointing to what's already true. This is pointing to what's natural as far as who you are is concerned. And one of the things that has been clear to me recently, it's been showing up over and over again in my speaking, is that all that you need to do, all that's necessary, it's not a do, all that's necessary is to pay attention. Pay attention from awareness. All that's necessary is to pay attention from awareness. All that's necessary is to pay attention not from thinking, but from what's there when you're not attending to the thought. Pay attention from what's there when your attention is away from thinking. Pay attention to that, right? And if you pay attention to that, and if you become more aware of the awareness, if you become more consistently aware of awareness and more consistently experiencing being aware of awareness, the light of that awareness, which has infinite intelligence, the light of that awareness, which has infinite wisdom, shining on what's happening, will transform it. Do you follow me? Just paying attention. For example, in terms of what you were saying, right? So the invitation is this: instead of having the circumstances change your behavior, instead of having the circumstances, instead of making the conclusion, oh, I can't meditate here, I won't come here, I'll just come to where where the circumstances are better, and I'll come to that to meditate, right? But here's what I'm trying to get across. This serves you better than that. because this is training you to be present to circumstances that you would normally consider to be distracting. And he already said, you know, so maybe something wrong with him, because he already said that it didn't bother him that the noise was there. But the thing that I will tell you is it's possible to meditate under all circumstances. What does it require? That's what the person said to me yesterday after we had this conversation. She said, I see that. What does it require? You know, I can see what the conditioning has caused. You know, what would it take for me to be different, right? And what did I say is the answer? So if it's possible, if there's a possible way of being, that would allow you to be with what's happening and not have what's happening determine your experience, would that possible way of being be useful? Yeah, clearly, right? So that's not the case under ordinary circumstances. It's not the case when we talk about these things. What you report is that's not the way it is, right? Yeah, so you have a way of being that's not consistent with the possibility, right? You have a way of being that's not consistent with the possibility, right? How did you get that way? Yeah, go ahead. How did you get that way? How did you get the way you are?
Years in training.
Yeah, conditioning, yeah. But the thing is this, you could say training, you could say conditioning, right? But what it boils down to is you practiced it, didn't you? Yeah, you could blame society, you could blame your parents, but the bottom line is, as far as your brain is concerned, it got to where it is through practice, didn't it? Neuroplasticity. You trained your brain to be the way it is. Now we're talking about a possible way of being that could allow you to experience a different life, a life in which circumstances did not determine your experience. That's a possibility, but it's not the way it is right now. The way it is right now is the way the conditioning ended you up being. The way you ended up is the way it is right now. How you practiced to be this way. Of course, you didn't know you were practicing, did you? No, you didn't know. So if there's this other possibility, how are you going to get from where you are to that possibility? Practice. Once you get it, right, the next thing is to take responsibility for it. And what that means is you can no longer play the blame game, right? If you get the truth, you can't play the blame game, because there is nothing and nobody responsible for the experience you're having. There is nothing and nobody responsible for the experience you're having. So you have to be willing to take responsibility for it. But if you practice meditation, and if you practice developing and deepening the understandings of what's happening by slowing down and looking at it instead of just continuing to mindlessly, go through the patterns, instead of continually to mindlessly play out the neural patterns, if you start to learn to pay attention and slow down and listen, as I said to another one of my clients that I was working with this week, you've got to train yourself to listen to your speaking and listen to how you lie. You've got to train yourself to listen to your speaking and listen to how you lie. Not that you're going to, feel bad about it or you're going to struggle to change it, but in the light of awareness, if you pay attention to your speaking and you can hear the lying, and you're paying attention to your speaking and you can hear the lying in your speaking in the light of awareness, that will naturally generate a process in which that will clear up, because it's being seen in the light of the truth. Does that make any sense? It's being seen in the light of the truth. So if you see, what I say is, if you practice, not only in terms of a situation like this where there's just, because the noise is pretty much neutral, right? That's different from somebody attacking you verbally, isn't it? Yeah. But if you practice consistently, you could actually get to a point when somebody's attacking you verbally, and you could be as centered and grounded as you could be in this room in relationship to that noise. Yeah, so you have to understand that this is a brain-changing process, especially now that we have the science that backs it up. This is a brain-changing process. And so when do you practice and where do you practice?
All the time, everywhere.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of meditation if you really understand what you're doing when you meditate. You can practice meditation anytime, anywhere, under all circumstances. And the best place to practice is under the circumstances, right? Under the circumstances that you feel are causing your experience or causing you to suffer is the best place to practice. So, it's up to you. It's up to you. You can either follow what the voice in your head tells you and believe the conclusion that you can't meditate unless it's under the right conditions. Or you can practice meditating under all conditions, right? And see and look and notice the difference that it makes if you do that. I understand. Do you understand? I want to be clear with you that I understand what you're saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you should be different, right? But I am saying there's a possibility that's involved here. And if you understand the possibility, practicing meditating when there's noise might lead you to practice being able to experience a state of being, a state of awareness that can change your life. That's what's available. It is what it is, and what it is. It is what it is, and what it is. This is what I want to leave you with, because I'm going to keep hammering this, because it's clear to me that if you can get through this, if you can get through dealing with predetermination and no free will, you're home. If you can get through dealing with predetermination and no free will, you're home, because that's where the suffering is happening from. Yeah, so when things happen, like when they came to me and said, we're going to have to change the room you're in, right? I could have complained and, went through all these machinations and so forth and so on, right? But the way I related to it was the way I'm practicing relating to everything, and I highly recommend it, right? The way I related to it is the way I'm practicing relating to everything. And what is the way I'm practicing to relate to everything? Please tell me. If you practice, thy will be done. If you practice, thy will be done, you'll start to experience freedom. Because if you practice thy will be done, it's only a matter of time before you give up the no-brainer, pea-shooter, crazy idea that you can control all this. That's what you'll give up if you practice thy will be done, right? And if you give up control, if you let things be the way they are and then just focus your attention on who you really are, which is awareness itself, things will start to work. Because life does work. Things do work. It's the conditioned brain and conditioned state of mind you're in that doesn't work. Do you understand? Do you get that? Yeah. If you just get that and then trust the process and just practice, keep practicing, keep coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath, coming back to the breath. You're developing a muscle when you keep coming back to the breath, and the muscle you're developing is the ability to be aware of your attention and direct it where you want to have it. That's the muscle. And that's the same muscle that will allow you to meditate no matter what's going on. Yeah. Because the key to meditating no matter what's going on is to allow it to go on, allow everything to be the way it is, included in the experience you're having of meditation. Meditation is not, see the thing, if you define meditation as the experience that's possible, if you define meditation as the experience that's possible for me to have under the right conditions, right? You'll never learn to meditate, because that's not what it is. And yet, that's exactly how people perceive it, whenever somebody says, I can't meditate, right? I can't focus, I can't meditate right now because of. Okay. So it's, the conditions are nice outside today, therefore you can enjoy yourself. Right? It's good weather today, therefore you can enjoy yourself while it lasts.